There is something unusual about this moment. Out of all the videos you could have clicked, out of all the messages that could have appeared in front of you today, somehow you arrived here. And what you are about to hear is not the kind of message people stumble upon by accident. Because this message begins with a question. What if the person destined for you has already spoken your name in prayer? What if somewhere, in a moment of loneliness, hope, tears, or faith, your soulmate looked toward heaven and said, God, if this person is truly meant for me, please bring them into my life. Please let me marry them. And what if God answered? Not with a simple yes. Not with a simple no. But with an answer so unexpected, so powerful, and so life-changing that neither of you could have imagined it. Stay with me, because the final revelation changes everything. There are seasons in life when people believe they are waiting alone. You may feel that way right now. Perhaps you have spent months wondering where your person is. Perhaps you have watched others find love while your own story seemed frozen in time. Perhaps you have questioned whether true love even exists for you anymore. But what if the delay was never a punishment? What if the delay was preparation? Because according to countless stories of destiny, faith, and divine timing, the greatest relationships often begin long before two people ever meet. The connection starts in the unseen. The preparation starts in silence. And the prayer starts before either heart understands what God is doing. Imagine your soulmate for a moment. Not the fantasy version. The real person. The person with fears. The person with scars. The person who has made mistakes. The person who has cried when nobody was watching. The person who has wondered if they would ever find someone who truly understands them. One night, after disappointment, they stopped pretending to be strong. They stopped trying to control everything. And they whispered a prayer. Not a perfect prayer. Not a polished prayer. Just an honest one. God, please send me the person you have chosen for me. What happened next is the part nobody talks about. Because when that prayer reached heaven, something surprising occurred. The answer was not immediate. The answer was not simple. The answer was not, tomorrow. Instead, the answer was, not yet. And those two words changed everything. Not because the prayer was rejected, but because God saw something they couldn't see. He saw two lives moving toward each other. He saw two stories that were still being written. He saw lessons that had not yet been learned. He saw wounds that had not yet healed. He saw growth that had not yet happened. And he knew that bringing you together too early would have destroyed what was meant to last forever. Think about that. Sometimes people cry because a door remains closed. Yet the closed door is the very thing protecting their future. Your soulmate may have thought God was silent. You may have thought God was silent. But silence and absence are not the same thing. A seed underground looks inactive. Yet beneath the surface, life is forming. Roots are growing. Strength is developing. Preparation is happening. And that is exactly what was taking place. While you were living your life. While they were living theirs. God was arranging details neither of you could see. A conversation here. A lesson there. A heartbreak that taught wisdom. A disappointment that created maturity. A challenge that built character. Nothing was random. Every step was preparation. Now here comes the shocking part. Many people assume their soulmate is waiting comfortably somewhere. But that is rarely true. Often, the person destined for you is fighting battles you know nothing about. They may have been struggling with fear. They may have been rebuilding after betrayal. They may have been learning how to trust again. They may have been praying for strength. And every challenge was shaping them into the person capable of loving you correctly. At the same time, your own journey was preparing you too. The heartbreak you thought ruined you. The delay you thought defeated you. The loneliness you thought was meaningless. It was all creating the version of you that would be ready when the right moment arrived. Now listen carefully. Because this is where the story becomes extraordinary. The prayer did not disappear. The request did not expire. The moment your soulmate asked God to let them marry you, heaven remembered. And every day afterward, unseen progress continued. Even when nothing appeared to be happening. Even when circumstances looked impossible. Even when distance seemed too great. Even when timing seemed wrong. The answer was still moving forward. There is an ancient truth many people overlook. Divine timing often feels like denial until the reason is revealed. Think about that. What looks like rejection today may become the greatest blessing tomorrow. What looks like delay today may become protection tomorrow. And what looks impossible today may become obvious tomorrow. Your soulmate may not even realize how close they are to crossing paths with you. You may not realize it either. But the distance between two destinies can shrink faster than anyone expects. One conversation. One opportunity. One unexpected event. One ordinary day. That is all it takes for everything to change. And when it does, people often look back and say something astonishing. I never saw it coming. Because destiny rarely announces itself loudly. It often arrives disguised as coincidence. A chance meeting. An unexpected message. A random introduction. A surprising encounter. Yet behind the scenes, a greater plan has been unfolding all along. Now imagine something for a moment. Imagine your soulmate standing before God again. Imagine them asking, "Will I ever find the person meant for me?" And imagine God responding with words that would leave them speechless. I am already preparing them. Not preparing someone else. Preparing you. Imagine hearing that. Imagine discovering that while you were worrying, doubting, and questioning, God was already working on the answer. Imagine realizing that your name had already become part of someone else's prayer. That realization alone changes everything. Because suddenly you are no longer wandering without purpose. You are part of a story bigger than you realize. A story that began before either of you understood it. A story that continues even now. But there is another revelation. One that surprises nearly everyone. The person meant for you may not be who you expect. Many people become attached to a specific image. A specific timeline. A specific outcome. Yet destiny often arrives wearing a different face than the one imagined. Not because God wants to disappoint you. Because He wants to exceed expectations. The blessing is often greater than the picture you created. The reality is often better than the fantasy. The truth is often more beautiful than the dream. That is why some doors had to close. That is why some relationships had to end. That is why certain people had to leave. Not because your story was over. Because your real story had not started yet. And when your soulmate prayed for you, they were unknowingly praying for that real story. Not a temporary connection. Not a short chapter. Not a lesson disguised as love. Something deeper. Something lasting. Something worth waiting for. Now here comes the revelation that leaves many people stunned. What if the answer God gave your soulmate was not simply about marriage? What if the answer was about transformation? Because before two people can build a future together, they often need to become who they were meant to be individually. That means growth. That means healing. That means courage. That means faith. And those things take time. Imagine receiving your greatest blessing before you were ready to keep it. Imagine achieving your dream before developing the wisdom to protect it. The gift would become a burden. The opportunity would become a struggle. The blessing would become a problem. So God waits. Not because He enjoys delays. Because He values permanence over speed. That changes the way we see waiting. Waiting is not always empty. Sometimes waiting is construction. Sometimes waiting is preparation. Sometimes waiting is proof that something important is being built. And perhaps that is exactly what has been happening. Maybe the unanswered questions were not signs of abandonment. Maybe they were signs of preparation. Maybe the silence was not rejection. Maybe it was construction. Maybe the delay was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning. Now picture this. Your soulmate kneels in prayer once more. They ask, God, is my future spouse out there? And God answers, yes. Are they worth waiting for? Yes. Will I understand the reason for all these delays? Yes. Will our paths cross when the time is right? Yes. Imagine hearing those answers. Imagine knowing that every fear, every doubt, every sleepless night was leading towards something greater than you could currently see. Because that is often how destiny works. The pieces make sense only after they connect. The picture becomes clear only after it is complete. And the reason for the journey becomes obvious only after the destination appears. So if you have been questioning your future, if you have been wondering whether your person exists, if you have been asking why everything feels delayed, remember this. Somewhere beyond your understanding, a prayer was spoken. A request was made. A future was placed into God's hands. And the answer did come. Not according to human timing. According to divine timing. And that answer continues moving even now. Closer than yesterday. Closer than last month. Closer than last year. Every lesson learned. Every obstacle overcome. Every step taken. bringing two destinies nearer together. The most incredible part is that neither of you may fully realize it yet. You may still think nothing is happening. Your soulmate may think nothing is happening. Yet unseen progress continues. Doors are opening. Paths are aligning. Circumstances are shifting. The future is moving. And one day, when the story is finally revealed, you may discover something astonishing. The prayer that seemed unanswered was being answered the entire time. The waiting that seemed pointless had a purpose. The silence that seemed empty was full of preparation. And the person who once asked God to let them marry you will finally understand why the answer took so long. Because the answer was never simply, yes. The answer was, yes, but first I must prepare both of you for a love greater than either of you can currently imagine. And when that preparation is complete, the revelation will leave you stunned. Not because the miracle happened, but because you will realize it was happening all along. There is one final layer to this story that most people never discover until much later. The day your soulmate asked God to marry you was not the only day your name mattered. Because after that prayer, something remarkable began to happen. Without realizing it, both of you started moving toward the same destination. Not in a straight line. Not in a predictable way. But through a series of moments that seemed completely unrelated. A lesson here. A setback there. An unexpected opportunity. A sudden change of direction. A door opening where no door existed before. At the time, neither of you understood why those things were happening. But heaven understood. And that changes everything. You see, most people think destiny is one dramatic event. One magical encounter. One perfect moment. Yet the truth is far more fascinating. Destiny is often built through hundreds of invisible decisions that eventually lead two lives into the same place. Think about all the places you almost went. All the opportunities you almost accepted. All the people you almost chose. All the roads you almost traveled. Now imagine how many times God quietly redirected your steps. Not because He was keeping something from you. Because He was leading you toward something. Toward someone. Toward a future that was already known in heaven long before it became visible on earth. And this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. There may have been moments when your soulmate was much closer than you think. Perhaps you were in the same city. Perhaps you walked the same streets. Perhaps you visited the same places. Perhaps your lives crossed without either of you realizing it. The thought is astonishing. To imagine two people connected by destiny moving through the same world, completely unaware of what is being prepared. Yet stories like this happen more often than people realize. The future has a strange way of introducing itself gradually. Before the meeting comes the preparation. Before the blessing comes the transformation. Before the answer comes the waiting. And before the marriage comes the becoming. Because the greatest relationships are not built on attraction alone. They are built on readiness. That is why your soulmate's prayer triggered something deeper than a simple request. It started a process. A divine process. A preparation process. A transformation process. And sometimes transformation feels uncomfortable. There were moments when you felt stuck. Moments when you felt forgotten. Moments when you wondered whether your best days had already passed. But what if those moments were serving a purpose? What if every challenge was removing something that could have damaged your future? Every disappointment teaching wisdom. Every setback creating strength. Every delay developing patience. Every heartbreak increasing discernment. Suddenly the story looks different. Because the things that seem to be working against you may actually have been working for you. Now imagine your soulmate during those same years. Imagine the growth they were experiencing. The lessons they were learning. The fears they were overcoming. The maturity they were gaining. The person who prayed for you years ago may not even be the same person today. And neither are you. That is the miracle of preparation. It changes people. It shapes people. It strengthens people. And eventually it creates two individuals capable of building something extraordinary together. There is a reason why some blessings arrive later than expected. The blessing itself is only part of the miracle. The people receiving it are the other part. And both parts must be ready. Now here comes the revelation that surprises many people. Sometimes the very thing you are praying for is also praying for you. Think about that. While you have been asking questions about your future, your soulmate may have been asking questions too. While you have been wondering where they are, they may have been wondering where you are. While you have been hoping, they may have been hoping. While you have been waiting, they may have been waiting. Two hearts asking similar questions. Two lives moving toward the same answer. Two stories gradually approaching the same chapter. That realization changes the entire meaning of waiting. Because waiting no longer feels empty. Waiting becomes evidence that a story is still unfolding. And stories worth remembering are rarely rushed. Now imagine the moment when everything finally becomes clear. The meeting happens. The conversation begins. The connection forms. And suddenly there is a strange sense of familiarity. A feeling that this person somehow belongs in your story. A feeling that the journey makes sense. A feeling that every delay had a purpose. People often describe these moments in similar ways. They say they cannot fully explain it. They say it feels natural. They say it feels peaceful. They say it feels like coming home. Not because everything is perfect, but because something deeper feels right. And perhaps the most shocking realization arrives afterward. The realization that God answered the prayer long before either of you recognized the answer. The answer was hidden inside the preparation. Hidden inside the waiting. Hidden inside the growth. Hidden inside the journey. The answer was unfolding one day at a time. And neither of you could see the full picture while living through it. Only later would everything connect. Only later would the delays make sense. Only later would the obstacles reveal their purpose. Only later would you understand why certain people left, why certain plans failed, and why certain doors remained closed. Because every closed door was protecting an open door you had not reached yet. Every ending was creating space for a beginning. Every detour was guiding you toward the correct destination. And that destination was always closer than it appeared. So if you find yourself questioning the future tonight, remember this. The story is not finished. The prayer has not been forgotten. The answer has not disappeared. The timing has not been lost. The plan has not failed. Something is still unfolding. Something is still moving. Something is still being prepared. And one day, when the final pieces come together, you may discover that the most stunning part was never the marriage itself. The most stunning part was realizing that God had been answering the prayer from the very beginning. Not in the way anyone expected. Not according to human schedules. But through a process so precise, so detailed, and so perfectly timed that looking back, every chapter suddenly makes sense. And when that day arrives, you will understand a truth that few people ever fully grasp. The waiting was not wasted. The silence was not empty. The delay was not rejection. It was preparation for an answer far greater than either of you imagined when that first prayer was spoken.